everybody. Welcome to GoJo and Golic. Mike Golic Jr., Mike Golic Sr., Jesse Cofield holding it down for us in the DraftKings studio in Boston. We're brought to you by Wrangler, made for the ride of life. Save 15% on your first Wrangler.com order with promo code GOJO15. Got a great show for you. As always, make sure you download, subscribe, rate, review. Leave us that 5-star rating and check us out live here Monday through Friday, 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern on the DraftKings YouTube channel, DraftKingsNetwork.com, Samsung TV Plus, Roku, and more. Fun one today, and got a packed house coming in here. Jason Fitz from Yahoo Sports is going to help us break down the College Football Playoff Committee's rankings from last night and some interesting things starting to show up in the picture. I think there's going to be one bit of the ranking in particular that most people hone on this time around, and it's not what you're thinking at number one. We've also got Will Anderson Jr., former Alabama linebacker, current Houston Texans defensive end, stopping by to join us, talk about their season, the Good Vibes Texans, and the differences between DeMeco Ryans and Nick Saban, which I'd imagine are many. But it is also Wednesday, and that means it is exciting for us and the perfect time, given last night's events, to bring in our dear friend, your dear friend, Charlotte Wilder, co-host of Oddball with Amin El Hassan, whose graphic every week gets cooler and has more things involved happening with it for Wilder Wednesday. Charlotte, you are truly our most honored guest.
I mean, I'm so honored. I feel like, it started moving a little bit more now. What do they call that in the business? Animation? What is this, the 1930s? I'm so happy to be here, guys. I feel like the basketball gods have gifted us with the most incredible content that we couldn't have seen coming even as of 8:30 Eastern last night. So I love when a show plan gets completely ripped up overnight because stuff was just too good and you have to talk about it.
That's the best thing for people behind the curtain a little bit. You can see it on SportsCenter or really any show. You kind of set, for this show, it's kind of a loose rundown of where you want to go. But then things that happen, like Charlotte said, you just rip it up and you have to start somewhere else. We were going to start with the firing of Ken Dorsey, the OC for the Buffalo Bills. But we found out last night, Charlotte, that the in-season tournament means something to these players. As Golden State and Minnesota decided to get multiple players thrown out in the first minute and 40 seconds of the game because they want the trophy and they want the $500,000 each for the win.
I couldn't believe it. I actually, we had League Pass on and it was like, okay, should we put on Clippers Nuggets? Should we put on Timberwolves Warriors? And I was like, oh, definitely Clippers Nuggets. Like, let's see what these clowns in LA are up to. And then, my husband gets an alert on his phone and he was like, wait, what? It was like Klay Thompson jersey ripped. And we were like, that game's been on for like a minute and a half. And then it was just mayhem. It was absolute mayhem. Mike, did you see this coming?
I did not see this coming, and for anyone that may have missed it, if you're waking up right now and for whatever reason didn't digest this, Charlotte is absolutely right. You look on the score bug of a lot of the images that are going to come from the fight from the Warriors and Timberwolves game. It is 0-0. The score is 0-0 at the point in the game where this happens, where there's an altercation between Klay Thompson, is it Jaden McDaniels?
Jaden McDaniels, yes.
Yeah.
It's Klay Thompson and Jaden McDaniels are getting into a bit of altercation. Rudy Gobert comes over to insert himself in this, and this is when preparation met opportunity. Draymond Green, who I'd imagine is in a chorus of people who just don't like Rudy Gobert. I would imagine if you took a poll of NBA players, Rudy Gobert is probably the most disliked player in the league for a litany of reasons, and Draymond Green decides to come out over here and exercise his NBA fight rights by choking out Rudy Gobert and full rear naked chokehold. Like, he sunk this thing in. He had the fist in there, everything. And then it all ensued from there. That was really, Dad, I think the end of it is everyone else seemed a little bit surprised when the chokehold came out. They obviously all got ejected in here. I saw Rudy Gobert saying and putting on his tinfoil hat that, because Steph Curry was resting tonight, Draymond Green didn't want to play in this game, and so he went out and made sure he got himself thrown out pretty early on in this one. But, Dad, in terms of overall fight quality, because this is some of the most action we've gotten in a while. You are a member of a Philadelphia Eagles team, especially on defense, under Buddy Ryan, that encouraged fighting maybe more than any administration in the history of the free world. How does this one hit for you?
So, okay, let's break this one down. and again, it was a minute 40 in when this happened. It's the first time in the past 25 years that there have been multiple ejections before a point has been scored. And you laid it out. Jaden McDaniels and Klay Thompson kind of got into it away from the ball and going down the court. Klay Thompson couldn't believe he got thrown out. But it was McDaniels, Klay Thompson, and Draymond Green. Those were the three that were thrown out. So this is a dissection of a fight. Draymond Green, because of his history, is basically going to get tossed no matter what, even if he's trying to be the peacemaker. But he wasn't here. So as Mike said, he gets Rudy Gobert in a chokehold. So there's fighting in a way that you can get away with, and then fighting and then knowing not to cross the line to get thrown out. Draymond Green, as he usually does, crosses the line and gets thrown out. He keeps the chokehold. I mean, he is trying to put Rudy Gobert to sleep. He has that thing in so tight. It's like, Mike, when we were doing the show in Jacksonville and you were screwing around and got me in a rear chokehold and almost ended me right there without you even realizing it. You had it in pretty deep. He was trying to get it in deep and work it, okay? So Rudy Gobert, at that point, you would think, you're getting choked, man. You're going to go nuts to get out of it. He throws his hands up. This is where it gets kind of smart. He's not going to get tossed. Watch Karl Anthony Towns. Karl Anthony Towns gets behind Draymond and is thinking about putting Draymond in a chokehold. He actually almost starts to do it, and then he stops, almost like he understands, and maybe I'm giving him more credit than he deserves, the line of, if I do this, I'm probably going to get tossed too, because Gobert and Karl Anthony Towns both stayed in the game. Minnesota won the game, by the way. So in fighting, there's a line, if you cross it, you're gone no matter what. Klay Thompson still has no idea why he got ejected. Neither does Steve Kerr. Draymond Green never questioned anything. After that stop, Draymond Green just starts walking off the court because he knows he's gone. And Gobert and Karl Anthony Towns get to stay on the court because they didn't cross the line of you knowing in your sport what you have to do to get tossed. So I thought, the intricacies of what within the fight to me are always very interesting.
No, see, Charlotte, I'm completely disagreeing here.
Really?
I'm looking at Karl Anthony Towns sideways. One, and Dragonfly Jones posted this, pointed this out on Twitter. Draymond, when Cat went to go try and headlock him, tucked the chin, didn't give him
Smart
access,
move.
deterred access pretty instantly. I don't think Karl actually wanted in on that. Karl Anthony Towns is another guy who deals with the label of, like, does he really want the smoke like that? I'm a firm believer he didn't want these problems in that Charlotte. I think he was ducking the action. And honestly, in every fight, Dad, you know this, when the frame shows up and you're watching a fight after in the film room or something like that, the only directive used to be, you need to be running towards the action. If you're standing in the back, people are going to be wondering what the deal is here. And if I'm Rudy Gobert, I'm looking up. Cat and Ant-Man were both right there, not doing a damn thing. And I looked at that and I was like, oh, they really don't mess with that dude because nobody was coming to help for him, Charlotte.
No, they weren't. And also, Steve Kerr said this in the press conference afterwards. But if you look at the fight, if you break it down, as we all did because we are journalists, you can see that Rudy has Klay first in a like neck lock and then like under the arm. So you could make the argument that it looks like he's trying to drag Klay away from Jaden McDaniels.
He said he was. Yeah.
Right. He said he was. Yeah. And Jaden McDaniels has Klay like pretty intense. I would say I don't think Klay should have gotten ejected. I mean, maybe, I don't know, maybe not even McDaniels. Like, I think that there was, if you just give him each attack and keep going, that would have been fine. But you see Gobert's being a little bit of a sneak in this entire situation, as he always is, because he comes in, he's got his arm around Klay's neck first, and Draymond sees that. And I'm not defending Draymond Green, but I am saying he saw his boy get choked up, and he was like, "Oh, okay, try me, Rudy." Like, he was looking, who isn't in the league looking for an excuse to do that? And then afterwards, as Mike said, putting the tinfoil hat on. But he also said, Rudy Gobert said of Draymond Green, "This is clown behavior." And if you don't think the next time that these two teams meet, we are in for some, I mean. When Adam Silver said in-season tournament, maybe these guys were like, oh, so he means like an old-timey jousting tournament. Like, there's going to be blood on the court. Like, it's more than we ever could have wished for in November of the NBA season.
100%, and I think that's the right takeaway from this, Charlotte, because those two teams have always had beef. I saw a lot of them resurfacing. The tweet from Rudy Gobert, insecurity is always the loudest, the tweet that Draymond then referenced later on in the postseason when those two teams were out there. There's plenty of bad blood there, but you were absolutely right. Dad, last night saved the in-season tournament, or maybe not saved it, but made the in-season tournament, because we had been searching around, wondering, what is this sort of amorphous blob of an idea? How's it actually coming together? Do players actually care about this? And right, wrong, or indifferent, whether you believe Dre was actually trying to get off the court, between Anthony Davis getting into it a little bit in the Memphis Grizzlies game, him and Desmond Bane barking at each other after a hard foul by AD under the basket. Last night had everything you could want if you were the commissioner to be able to look and say, look, they care. Look, they care about my thing. Look, people are talking about the NBA. I'm sure this can be all over First Take and all the talk shows today. This is going to rise to the national level and cut through on a Wednesday during football season. It's exactly where you want to live if you're Adam Silver and the NBA. This is perfect timing.
Yeah, they love that, and as we all know, it had nothing to do with the in-season tournament. Nothing to do with it at all. And listen, you may be right about Karl Anthony Towns not wanting the smoke here, but he never crossed the line, and he was trying to grab Draymond Green. He tried to go around the neck, and you're right about Draymond. Well, I mean, listen, he did what you're supposed to do.
He alligator-armed it.
He did what you're supposed to do, is you grab the other color jersey. That's what you do in a fight. You don't grab your own guy, because then your own guy can get it worse because you're holding your own guy.
I need you to grab him a little more forcefully than that. Like,
okay,
I need you to want to grab him a little bit.
All right,
help
that's
me.
Fine. That's fine. He was trying to grab him, and another was reaching around trying to grab him. Listen, he didn't get tossed out of the game. It's about him. You want him to rip Draymond off there, he's going to get tossed. I mean, you got to be smart about it. Then you sit there and you get the ridiculous comments. Well, I'm a man. I'm not going to get acted like that in the court, and then you're out of the game. I mean, you can't do that. That's ridiculous. That's this machoism that needs that. I don't want to say needs to be gone. And listen, again, this is from a guy that used to fight all the time, but we never crossed the line. We didn't get guys thrown out. You grab the other jersey, you do what you got to do, and you don't get thrown out of the game. So I'm not going to sit there and rip Karl Anthony Towns because he didn't go and pound on Draymond and get tossed out of the game. I mean, I'm not going to do it. The object is, at the end of the day, is to win the game. And he didn't run the other way. If you want to say he didn't do enough, okay, but he didn't run the other way. You want this machoism. You want everybody to start throwing punches and getting tossed out of the game. That ain't it. That's just not it.
Here's the thing, though, Senior. Not to carry water for the NBA, however, maybe this is because of the in-season tournament. There were a lot. Things got real chippy last night. Grizzlies, Lakers, you had AD and Desmond Bane going at it. OKC, Spurs, which was not a close game. I forget who it was. I'm blanking in the moment, but someone looked like he threw a punch. He didn't. It was a push. But in the moment, I was like, oh my God, are we full on fighting? And then Warriors, Wolves. I feel like you can't necessarily say there's nothing to do with the in-season tournament if all these things are happening on in-season tournament nights. Maybe it's that the court is doing weird things to these guys' psyches because the bright colors. Also, did you see the Pels court, the Pelicans, the neon green?
Yeah.
As they played the Mavs?
God.
That would mess with my mind.
Truly.
Yeah.
This is the
but
most college football that the NBA has ever been, by the way. Like, all of this gimmicky stuff is so deeply college football. And I get it from a marketing standpoint. You've got a new thing. You need to beat it into people's heads. Like, I was glad to see the broadcast pop the graphic with the standings for this, talk about how much the players are into it, reinforce this idea, even if it's not directly correlated, that yes, these players are playing extra hard because they want to be in Vegas for the semis and the championship, and they want this $500,000 that comes with all of this, and have the courts that when we see it visually, like, it has worked. I have gotten Stockholm Syndrome enough to where I like the NBA mid-season tournament courts, and I enjoy the fact that I have a visual nod that says, all right, when I see these, I know it's an NBA in-season tournament game. And I don't know what that means to me yet. Like, I don't know who's actually ahead in this tournament right now. I haven't paid attention to any of that stuff, but I go, ooh, in-season tournament, something different. And I think subtly that might be what Adam Silver's looking for.
And here's where I disagree with you guys. You can subtly think that, but you know who else doesn't know who's in the lead? The players. How many players have said they have no idea? The only reason they know it's an in-tournament game is because of the way the court looks. And the league should sell it. Anybody broadcasting the game should be bringing up every single time they come back from break. I agree with that. They should be selling the hell out of this thing. But I will completely disagree that the fights last night were because they were tournament games. I don't buy it, and I never will. Not at this point. I don't think enough players even know. I shouldn't say that. They know it because of the court. They know it because of the court. But that is not, if you're trying to tell me that would not have happened if it wasn't an in-season game, I'm disagreeing completely.
All three of them? All three of them?
All of them. Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay. What I will say, I feel like this is already working. I feel like the in-season tournament has proved itself. I
agree with that.
Yeah. I think that I always actually thought that this was a good idea. I always thought that because just by virtue of it happening, I knew we were going to be talking about it. Everyone in sports media, because it is a thing, and I think that the courts have done a huge amount to help that because it is this visual thing. I have to tell you guys, first time I saw these courts, I was like, oh, these are hideous. I don't know how I'm going to watch basketball on these things. And in the back of my head, I was like, you're kind of going to like it. And it's actually going to be helpful because you're going to see that and you're going to know. And I just think that giving us some sort of, it's like when you're a little kid and it's like if someone gives you a blank piece of paper and they say, you say like, tell me what to draw. You need someone to tell you what to draw. But if they give you a coloring book, you're like, oh, yes, I know exactly what to do with this thing. And the NBA has basically given us a coloring book and said, here is something to make the beginning of the season a little bit more interesting, something that we know you are going to engage with because we just gave you the coloring book. They just gave it to us, and here we are, and we're talking about it during football season, which was the whole point.
We're talking about it because there was a fight. We're not talking about the game. We're talking about it because there was a fight. That's why we're talking about this. But
we're talking about the in-season tournament.
We're still talking
about it. No, the only reason we're doing it is because there was a fight. Here's when I'll give in to what you guys are saying. Show me the ratings. Show me the ratings that the in-tournament games are rating higher.
Media executive dad. Media.
So wait a minute. So you can just arbitrarily tell me that they're more interesting, yet if the ratings are lower, you're still going to bang the drum that they're more interesting when less people are watching. I mean, give me a break. That makes no sense at all.
No, even without the fights last night, though, before the fights happened last night, I texted Mike and I was like, I think we should talk about the in-season tournament. And is it working? Is it not? Sure, maybe some of that is by virtue of the fact that this is the first year. So we're going to be talking about it no matter what. But we still are talking about it. And then when enough stuff happens in those games, whether it's because of it or not, I was sort of being cheeky when I was like, maybe it's because of it. Whether or not, it still gives us something to contextualize this entire experience in. And that's where I think that the NBA has already won with this thing.
Completely agree.
Whether it's translating to ratings, I don't know. Yep. It's definitely translating to attention from people like us.
Yeah, it's an economy of eyeballs that you're looking at here, and how that manifests can't always be dealt with, I think, in traditional metrics and numbers like that. It did also mask, with volume and ferocity last night, the fact that Chet Wemby matchup that we were really building up, Oklahoma State and the Spurs, had 17 combined points between the two. And I actually felt Shaq's frustration on the TMT halftime desk, because normally I just kind of chuckle and watch them be the old-time guys, talk about the good old days, and Shaq just criticize every big man by saying, if you were actually good like me, you would just dominate and take over the game like Shaquille O'Neal, one of the best basketball players ever. I wanted to see those guys actually go up against each other. I'm not even talking about in the block. Face up on the perimeter. Do anything. And we barely had any interaction between those two, and it made me sad.
Wemby went 8 points, 14 rebounds. Chet 9.7 rebounds, and Oklahoma City blew him out 123-87. So yeah, it was a big time dud. And I get them trying to build it up. They should, but unfortunately, it was a dud.
Oh, look at our in-season tournament courts here on the bump out here. Is that my mugshot?
Wow.
What the hell's wrong with you guys? All right, guys, welcome back. NBA Fight Night brought out the absolute best in us. That was the sports talk radioist thing we've done in quite a while around here. We all walked into the break and we're like, that felt good. That felt nice.
It did.
You know what? I can see how Mad Dog's lasted as long as he had in the industry, because when you go and attack every day just like that, you feel so alive. It's like the fountain of youth for sports talking head, Charlotte.
Yeah, it was
really
those days. All we need to do is open the caller line now, right?
Truly, getting an argument like that go. I mean, it's a high. It really is. The cameras go off, and we're like, "Whoo, we are cooking."
A cigarette after this one. It was delightful.
Let's get real spicy.
Well, you know what? We can keep doing that, because I was amazed yesterday, guys. The thing that would have led, were it not for Rudy Gobert getting choked out by Draymond Green, would have been what went on with the Buffalo Bills yesterday. Coming off that loss in Monday Night Football, Ken Dorsey, their offensive coordinator, gets fired, and Buffalo's kind of in a tailspin now. You've got Stephon Diggs' brother, out here subtweeting the organization saying we need to get 14 out of there, talking about how Josh Allen wasn't anything until Stephon Diggs got over here. And it ignited, Dad, this whole conversation about what the actual problem is with the Buffalo Bills, because I saw a lot of people understandably pointing out that, Dad, when you look at every way that we can measure offensive production for an NFL football team, the Buffalo Bills are one of the best offenses in the NFL, except for turnovers. And as many people have pointed out, it's not like Ken Dorsey just calls the turnover play and things happen. So did you think firing Ken Dorsey was justifiable at this juncture, Dad?
No, I think this is one of those things that Sean McDermott felt he had to do something, because he feels he has a playoff team. We all thought he had a playoff team, and now they're going to be scratching to make the playoffs, and they're better than what they're showing. Listen, early on in the season, there was I think a 3-game stretch where they scored weeks 2 to 4, 2, 3, and 4. They scored at least 37 points in those games. Now they've gone 6 games without scoring 26 points. But you're right. A lot of times there's a sacrificial lamb when you feel like a change has to be made, because you sit there and you look at the bottom line. Bills fire offensive coordinator Ken Dorsey, and right under it, it says 4 turnovers and a season-high 4 drop passes. Well, that has zero to do with Ken Dorsey. Nothing to do with Ken Dorsey. Josh Allen leads the league in turnovers, 11 interceptions and 3 fumbles. And they have drop balls. They've had, a decent amount this year of that as well. So it's not rolling right now. So he's a sacrificial lamb, because, yes, you cannot equate, as much as people may try to equate turnovers, maybe saying they're putting Josh Allen in a bad position and throwing turnovers. I don't want to hear that garbage. I don't. Players, as I've always said, this goes all the way back to the Belichick-Brady argument, who meant more. And they're both Hall of Famers, and they both meant a lot. But I will always lean to the player, because they're the ones on the field that have to execute. When you break down the game of football, it is a game of one-on-ones. Win your battle. You can have whatever game plan that you want, but if enough of your guys win your battles, you're usually in good shape. And when you're turning the ball over and dropping passes, that has nothing to do with the play call. So did Ken Dorsey deserve it? Probably not, but they've had a streak of not scoring 26 points, and this is one of those where you felt you needed to make a change for the sake of saying, we have a good team, we need to stir the pot a little bit. As Sean McDermott tried to say, this isn't just the last couple of games, this is over the entire season. Well, the entire season also showed you guys scoring 37 points in 3 weeks in a row. So, yeah, do I think it was fair? But as we say, a fair is where pigs are. It's not in pro sports.
A fair is a place where they judge pigs. As I've always said, a fair is a place where pigs are.
Where pigs are, something like that.
But I no, Dad, I think you're right. Is the math of this is, they paid Josh Allen a lot of money, and he is the player. So Josh Allen is going to stay here, and they had to do something to show that they were trying. And usually that manifests in the coach and the offensive coordinator getting fired. Sean McDermott has now parted ways with his offensive coordinator and defensive coordinator in the last year. And so you're starting to see the walls closing in a little bit. Because, Charlotte, I look at this and say, there are a lot of ways I can absolve Ken Dorsey, who, remember, was the quarterback coach for Josh Allen during the good years. So he has been a part of Josh Allen's positive development. You could say, hey, you need to do a little bit more in trying to coach some of the turnover-prone stuff out of Josh. He seems like the one quarterback in that star class that hasn't adjusted to the way that defenses have started playing them. Charlotte, do you think it's also because we anointed Josh a little bit too soon? Like, did we try and get a little bit too over our skis with our evaluation of this guy?
I mean, yes and no, because when he's been good, he's been unbelievable. I think his combination, the sheer power he has with his arm and the ability to scramble the way he can, I think there's obviously something very special there. And sure, in hindsight, you can say we anointed him too soon if he's had 11 interceptions. But what would you say to us when he was really rolling and they were, a second away from the Super Bowl if they had gotten a coin toss different against the Chiefs? Like, I think that it becomes very easy retroactively to be like, we said he was too good too soon, which sure, maybe we did. What my question is what is going on for him to be so rattled? I think in the game against the Jets, was that the first game of the season?
First game of the season. Yep.
He said after the game, I can't be forcing these plays. I can't be trying to will this to happen. So to me, he's still doing that. He had three turnovers in that game? Two interceptions
and a fumble lost in that game.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So to me, his saying that then, I've been sort of paying attention to that since, because it seems like he's still trying to force it. And I don't think it's Ken Dorsey's fault. I don't think it's any one person's fault. I think there's something going on there that has him shaken up, and Sean McDermott's got to figure out what that is.
And listen, a lot of this isn't new. I mean, he has 4 fumbles this year. Last year he had 8. Year before 5, 4, 7, 5. So he's fumbled the ball before. He's had double-digit interceptions every single year except his second year where he had 9. But he's on pace to have the most interceptions. The most he had was 15 back in 2021, and he's got 11 already. But he had 14 last year, 15 the year before. But you make up for that by throwing 34 and 35 touchdowns. So you deal with the interceptions. The one thing that makes it hard to judge with Josh Allen and an O coordinator, in my opinion, is Josh Allen creates, right? That's one of the things he does. You can have standard plays for him, but at the end of the day, he's going to create some things by getting out of the pocket and either throwing the ball or running the ball. But that also leads to problems. That also can lead to turnovers, especially turnovers in the red zone, when instead of, every play, unless it's a planned half roll or something like that, or a boot, is to be thrown from the pocket to your reads, 1, 2, 3 outlet, whatever it is. And that's obviously in here as well. But Josh does things on his own which can cause those problems and lead to interceptions and fumbles. So if you're going to try and make him back to that quarterback of just staying in the pocket, to me, that's wrong as well. You live with the good and the bad because of how he plays the game. And right now, unfortunately, it's more bad that Joe Brady now has to deal with. Remember, it was Daboll who was the OC. Dorsey was the quarterback coach. Daboll goes to New York. Dorsey takes over. Now Dorsey's gone. Joe Brady takes over, who came to fame when he led Joe Burrow's LSU team to the national championship. And he had a 2-year stint in Carolina that was So then he became the quarterback coach in Buffalo, and now he's the OC. So I don't know if there's a fix here, because as I said, you're dealing with interceptions, you're dealing with fumbles by Josh creating. You can't make him just a pocket quarterback.
And to your point, they've been really good in all the years that he's been turning the ball over.
Yes.
This team has gotten deep postseason runs. You guys have both said it. I think we can arrive at a place where Josh Allen is still one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. He's probably not on that Burrow-Mahomes tip where he can overcome so much and offset other parts of your roster that are super deficient, because we've seen other areas. Number 2 receiver, the decay of this defense to a certain extent. All these things around Josh that have changed that maybe don't insulate you as much from some of the mistakes. He has seen seems to be the one quarterback in that top tier that we talked about who has not made that shift from, okay, if teams want to take away the big play, I've got to be a little bit more patient. And we'll wait and see if that's something that the Bills can overcome, or if the next iteration of this team is going to have to involve a different Josh. Before we get to the rest of the AFC East and Charlotte's New England Patriots, or currently New England Patriots, I've heard rumors that Charlotte's got a little bit of a side team situation working right now. So we're going to explore some complicated romance as there's trouble in paradise there. But to put a bow on this conversation that we've had about Buffalo, because we were talking even during the break here about how much of this is the cost of doing business with Josh Allen, where you've gotten one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL, not the best quarterback, not someone who's actually going to challenge Patrick Mahomes, but one of, on his best days, the top 5 quarterbacks in the NFL, and on his worst, one that can turn the ball over enough to cost you games. How much of that is just the cost of doing business for a team that succeeded for the most part under him, and where they're at right now? Because I saw this, Mina Kimes tweeted this out yesterday, that in the last month where we've seen the Buffalo Bills struggle, they have been first in success rate, 8th in EPA per play, expected points added per play, all metrics that are good signs, and 32nd in turnover margin. So even by their standards, Dad, because turnover luck is something we talk about all the time. Usually, if you're turning the ball over a ton or not very much at all, it's going to find its way back to the middle somewhere. Yep. See the Minnesota Vikings early this season with all the fumbles lost there. With Josh Allen in Buffalo, it's been a pretty consistent through line with him. We've seen he's had the most interceptions since he entered the league, but this even seems like a more extreme version to where regression back to the mean and the Buffalo Bills playing better and turning the ball over slightly less than this, which has been the worst rate in the league, does feel like something that's statistically probable at this point and will likely have us talking a different way about Josh Allen, who's still going to be the same quarterback in the midst of all this.
No, I agree. Are we going to be shocked if this team still makes the playoffs and puts it together and makes a run? They have the talent to do that. I mean, right now they're just sputtering a little bit. As you mentioned, complimentary football is not there as much, but we've seen it before. And we all talk about it's not where you start, Charlotte, it's where you finish. And if you can be hitting on all cylinders by the end of the year and getting into the playoffs, that's all that matters.
I do think, though, that there's some locker room stuff that is probably going to need to be ironed out. We saw that in the offseason. There were rumors about something going on with Stephon Diggs and Josh, and now you have Stephon Diggs' brother tweeting about how he's got to get out of it. We got to get 14 out of there. And it just, that to me is the part of this that I don't know enough about to speak on definitively, but that I feel there's something that's not football related that is going on. I think I'm totally speculating here. I feel like there's something in that environment that something's rattling that team, because I don't see why otherwise suddenly he would start regressing the way he is. And maybe it's something, maybe it's not in the locker room, maybe it's not the team, maybe it's something going on with him. I just feel like people often discount for athletes how much whatever's going on in their life or whatever is happening off the field can actually impact your performance. And yes, the best can go compartmentalize, just, completely do their job without it affecting them, but they're still people and there's still very human elements of this. And I just feel like there's probably something else happening here that's contributing to everything that's going on, if that's not too far of a reach.
And Mike, real quick, Stephon Diggs isn't going anywhere unless they trade him. I mean, next year he has a $31 or $32 million dead cap hit. They're not going to eat that. So, but I agree with you, Charlotte. We saw that from the beginning of the year. Was there an issue going on, and is there one now? Maybe they need a players-only meeting like the Jets had, because usually everything is solved.
They had a players-only meeting. Latavius Murray called the players-only meeting before this game, and then they went out and lost. Now, Latavius Murray can at least look up and say, hey, I went out there and did my thing, because the Bills' rushing attack actually showed up in this. Ken Dorsey did put the ball in somebody else's hand, but everyone was dropping it in this game. James Cook was dropping that ball. Latavius Murray, I think, might have been the only guy that didn't give it up coming out of that Bills backfield. So even the players-only meeting could not save it. I agree, Charlotte, there's been a lot of smoke on this situation. I don't think it's that reckless, because we've seen way more than most teams coming out of that locker room in a way that's indicative, because nothing else. You look on the field, all of Stephon Diggs' numbers since he came over there have been top of the league. Targets, yards, catches, all these things. Statistically, he's been one of the most productive, if not the most productive receiver in the NFL since he came over here. And you talking about that, we're all reaching for something like that, because the rest of it on paper, again, is this team that is simultaneously the most confusing team in football and the simplest team in football, because they've got all these great things about them. They've got all these talented players, but they're being undone by turnovers in a way that we can't figure out, because turnovers are difficult and random. And so it leaves us, I think, simultaneously overrating and underrating what's wrong here. Josh Allen is still an incredible quarterback. Is he Mahomes, Burrow, and a couple of the guys in that top 3 range? No. Definitively not at this point, but he's still better than most of the guys that you got out here in the NFL, despite the fact that he's a little bit reckless with the football, and that's sometimes a little bit hard for people to get out from. Speaking of quarterbacks, though, let's get to Charlotte's relationship issues in New England. This was Mac Jones from yesterday on the idea that he is no longer the Patriots starting quarterback. There's a lot of will they, won't they about Mac Jones' future there. Here was the Patriots quarterback. I don't know first team, second team or not, talking about his future.
No, we haven't talked about that. Really just today we watched the game film and kind of talked about the plans for the bye week. So we have practice tomorrow. So just see how it goes there. And, the bye week's a great time to work on things that you can do better. So that's what I'm going to do.
That courtesy of 93.7 FM. And Dad, the bye week probably couldn't have come at any better time here. But Charlotte, I want to start with you, because you're obviously our Patriots aficionado on this show. This has to be the last time we've seen Mac Jones on the field, right? This weekend just felt like the straw that broke the camel's back.
I couldn't even watch it. I was just like, I slept in on Sunday, and when I woke up and I saw what the score was, I was just like, yeah, I think I'm good. It's really sad. It's really the most pathetic way that you could our dear friend Jessica Smetana tweeted, I thought I would enjoy the Patriots' downfall more, but it's just been so pathetic. And I think that for me, it's, as a fan of the team, it's been like, okay, well, there's not really, you can't hang on to any hope anymore. Even in the beginning of the season, I was like, yeah, maybe we've seen, Mac was in the Pro Bowl once, remember that? And it's just like after he just like throws the ball to the other team enough times, you're like, okay, well, what are we doing here? And I don't know what we're doing here, because I don't know that Bailey Zappi is your answer. I feel like he probably would have been playing if he'd been the answer. Is Will Grier the answer? Probably not. It's just I come back again and again to Bill Belichick as the GM. I think that has been the biggest mistake the Patriots have made. I think if you had a different GM in there, if you had another voice in the room, if you had someone pushing back, being like, are you sure? Then he would have remained a much better coach. But I think the collection of that power, he just started making decisions that I don't think were in the best interest of the roster. And we've seen it for like 3-4. I mean, even at the tail end of Brady's time there, we've seen it. So that's sort of how I'm doing about it.
And quite honestly, we keep talking about where Bill's going to be, and one of the thought is, will Bill relinquish that role? And no, I don't think he will. So if he's maybe at a different team next year, and I do think he will keep coaching even if he's gone, I do think deep down he'd love to get that record from Don Shula. But as far as is Mac Jones done playing, Mike, I would think he would be, but there's no way you can say it just because of the names Charlotte mentioned. What if Bailey Zappi comes in and throws 2 interceptions in the first half of a game? You're just going to leave him in there? Will Grier is going to get a chance? Plus, would they maybe, the possibility of injury? So while I would think Mac would be done, and Mac will be done in New England, when this season's over, I can't sit here and say he's done taking a snap. I think they would rather him be done now, but the tale of the other 2 quarterbacks, I have no idea where it's going to end up.
The 2021 draft class not having a great time on the quarterback front, as Zach Wilson and Mac Jones are both trapped in the same hell. Really, their teams are trapped in the same hell right now, where there aren't a lot of better options out there. This person's not going to be your quarterback. You still got like half a season left that you got to hang out with them. Enjoy that fun here. Coming up next, though, speaking of relationships, we got to tap into one of the most emotional scenes in the Bachelor franchise's history. the theme of the first hour has been messy relationship statuses, so we'll get to some very messy comments from Yankees GM Brian Cashman here shortly and the response that we've already seen. But it wouldn't be a Wilder Wednesday if we didn't get a little bit of a reality check here. The Golden Bachelor, a show so good it's actually drawn my dad back in to the Bachelor franchise, had the women tell all last week. So we're like 3 weeks out from the actual finale. They have very heavily teased the fantasy suites coming up, which we've got Golden Oldies sex about to go down in a way that everyone's way too comfortable talking about. Jesse Palmer was a little too excited. You could see Gary was not super comfortable standing next to him, knowing that his family and his daughter Charlotte were watching that, listening to Jesse talk about their dad going out there and knocking the boot.
Yeah, this is what's been the most fascinating to me about the whole thing. I'm like, what are they going to do about fantasy suites? Is it going to be like, and because the preview they showed was Gary being like, for me, it's about pillow talk. And I'm like, oh, is it, Gary? You made out with anyone who had a pulse this season. You kissed so many ladies and you told us you liked it. I don't know. I feel like this is unbelievable television. I am so sucked in. I can't get enough. I also feel like it's still horrible. Like, I think it's really mean. I think I have such a hard time. Like, the women tell all, Faith crying. Like, that wasn't like cute Bachelor crying. That was like Faith like couldn't talk. She was full on sobbing, asking Gary why he didn't choose her after he dumped her after hometowns, and apparently they hadn't spoken to each other since. And you're doing this on I just kept imagining if like my mom were up. I was like, I would murder Jesse Palmer. I would take down everyone at ABC for making my mom feel that way. So I don't know. I feel conflicted. I think obviously with The Bachelor, there are always dangling the carrot of hope of love. I think sometimes the idea of a relationship is what matters more to people than the actual person they would be in the relationship with. And I think when you're 25 and young and these women go home in the limos being like, I'm never going to find someone. It's like, you're going to be married in 4 years. So like, don't worry about it. And so for the older women where Faith is like, I don't know that I'm going to feel this way about someone because I hadn't in 25 years. It's like, okay, I hope you're wrong. I hope a bunch of people slide into your DMs because of this. But like, it seems like real heartbreak, guys.
Yeah, I think the stakes feel different because of the timeline presented. Like, I remember at one point Ellen was doing a toast and she's like, here's to finding love for the last decade. And I'm like, God, that's right. Like, deadlines drive results in this, so it makes it feel a little bit more real. And you're right, Charlotte. I think, Dad, and this is where I'm curious from your perspective, because so many of us, I think, watch this and see, like, oh, people are watching and saying, oh, that's like my parents, that's like my grandparents. They see people that they respect, that they love, that they admire in this. You look up there, and a couple of these people, there are a couple of 60-year-olds in there like Jones, so you see a few of their peers out there.
This is a couple of things. I do enjoy this, A, because it's an hour less. That helps. And B, there's just no drama. They went to commercial one time and threw up a commercial of Bachelor in Paradise, and I wanted to throw up. All of a sudden, there's a 24-year-old. It's exactly what Charlotte. I don't know if I'm ever going to find love, or two glaring at one another. It just makes me nauseous. I don't know if I can ever go back to the regular Bachelor because, again, it's 2 hours and it's a bunch of catty women. And, Mike, I want to ask you this. We're talking about the fantasy suites and how that's going to make you feel. Will it revert back to the training room at Notre Dame when I would talk about me and your mother and the porn music would play and you would be sitting there and you and your friends would be watching porn music play while I'm talking about your ma?
It won't revert back to that for me because it's not you up there, because I had to live this version of things directly in the way that Gary's kids are going to have to. When my dad used to like make jokes and imply that him and my mom were going to go home and have a little fun, which never happened. Which never actually happened. They would, on Mike and Mike, play the porn bed music. They're like, the old 70s, 80s porn bed music. And they would have that on in the training room at Notre Dame while I'm in there getting my ankles taped. And all my friends are looking at me like, dog, are you good? Like, no, I'm not good. Therapy's expensive. Thanks for asking. And so that's what Gary's kids are getting ready to go through here. So, I'm not going to enjoy that very much. What I did take away from the Women Tell All, though, Charlotte, was we got the most, I think, emotional moment in the history of any of these things. And it had nothing to do with Gary and everything to do with Ellen, the retired teacher and pickleball aficionado who came on the show because of her late friend, Roberta, who she referenced coming out of the limo and unfortunately passed away before this could all get going. She had late stage cancer, and they talked about that on the show. They ended up surprising Ellen with Roberta's daughter in the crowd, who had a bunch of really great things to say. But Charlotte, it felt like the realest moment. Like, even Jesse Palmer was in tears as the host, and that hardly ever happens as that's happening. So I was a puddle watching this moment happen, where you saw, like, okay, this is a dumb reality show, but to these people it meant enough to where it was part of the bond towards the end of someone's life. And seeing that laid out over the screen, how this was something she did to honor a friend in some way, I was overwhelmed in a way I was not prepared for.
Same. And I think that this is where the complication of reality TV is what fascinates me so much about it. Because on one hand, I can be like, this is horrible for people, like, look at Faith. And on the other hand, it's like, okay, well, you know, these two best friends who used to watch The Bachelor together their whole lives, and then one of them gets a chance to go on it and she becomes America's sweetheart at the age of 71. I think Ellen's 71. It's so moving. And it is a platform for these women to be seen as people and be seen as sexy and be seen as, it makes you think of women that age in a different way, as like, we're sitting there and I'm like, Joan's really hot. And it's not like Joan's really hot for a 6-year-old. It's like, she's just really hot. And that, I think, is so important. And they're so wise, and there's so much that they've seen, obviously, but that story about, I mean, I was sobbing. Like, I wasn't cute crying. I was full on it, you know. And I think that was a moment that surprised me in, it didn't feel as manipulative as a lot of these things can. It felt like Ellen did this for her friend and came on to give us an update, and the friend's daughter was there, and you could just see the real love between them. And I mean, I'm gonna get choked up talking about it. It was really remarkable. And that, to me, I was like, okay, these things are complicated. Like, watching any reality TV, but especially the Golden Bachelor, you just have to have, like, multiple things are true at once in your head. And this felt like the one of the more genuine moments we've seen, or if not from this franchise.
What I'd like to know is, how does Jesse Palmer now go back to a 25-year-old getting out of a limo who's a actress / bartender looking for love and clicks? You know, I mean, that's when he'll be going, the paycheck's really good, the paycheck's really good, the paycheck's really good.
You know what it is funny is, I think of, and I thought you were going to say, how does Jesse Palmer go back to calling college football games on the weekend? That's such a decidedly different tenor than this. But I actually think, in the way Charlotte laid it out there, this entire ordeal is a reminder of why Charlotte Wilder, the arbiter on what is and isn't sports in the world, The Bachelor has always been and will always be sports, because it is an inherently silly thing that we have ascribed, and some people have ascribed a lot of meaning to, like sports. These are young people wearing costumes, running into each other, or dunking balls into a metal rim, or any other number of stupid things in the base description of a sport that we've decided matter so much that they are the bonds that cement multiple generations of families, or that keep families together, or that get people through hard times when you've got a loved one sick. We create meaning in places where there isn't it, and that was the perfect example of that on that show.
Totally. And they're also inherently contradictory. There are horrible things about all of them, and they are not necessarily good for you. And yet, is the takeaway from them worth it? And maybe that's why we talk about them for a living. I don't know. I like to believe it. Guys.
I like to believe it as well. The takeaway from all this, by the way, is that you need to make sure that you have downloaded, subscribed, rated, and reviewed Oddball. Charlotte Wilder and Amin El-Hassan giving you great NBA takes every day but Monday during the weekdays here. Charlotte, thanks so much, buddy. You're the best.
Truly, always a pleasure.
Thanks, Charlotte.
Coming up next, though, we've got breaking news from inside the world of the NFL. Did the Cleveland Browns season end or just begin? Next here on GoJo and Golic.
Welcome back to GoJo and Golic. I'm Jesse Cofield. We have breaking news from Adam Schefter. Deshaun Watson is going to be undergoing a season-ending surgery on a broken bone in his throwing shoulder. You can see here that we have a statement from the Browns. So he underwent an MRI Monday, 2 injuries sustained on different plays in the first half of that game over the Ravens. Imaging on his left ankle revealed a high ankle sprain. Now, in addition, Deshaun notified the medical staff of a new discomfort in his right shoulder. So that MRI revealed a displaced fracture to the glenoid. I think I'm saying that right. So basically, despite performing at a high level, finishing the game, after consultation, it's been determined this injury is going to require immediate surgical repair to avoid further structural damage. So Deshaun Watson being placed on season-ending IR. Full recovery expected for the start of the 2024 season. Wow. I mean, a lot to take in here. That is some breaking news.
Yeah, huge news coming off this weekend, and what better time as we've got a full hockey line change going on here on GoJo and Golic. Charlotte Wilder joins us for the first hour. My father, Mike Golic Sr., has to leave for an appointment in the second hour, which means our good buddy, you can check him out over at Yahoo Sports, doing great college and NFL work, as well as on Fox Sports Radio on the weekends. Jason Fitz back with us now, and we are fully set to talk about a bunch of college football playoff ranking reactions, which we'll get to. You and I did a Twitter Spaces on that last night, but Fitz, initial reaction to this news. Deshaun Watson, who has been bad and beat up for a lot of this season, but on a Browns team that still has all of their hopes and dreams, or did, right in front of them, coming off one of the biggest wins of their season, now gets this news about their quarterback. What does it mean?
All right, so let's take two sides of it. Number one, you've got the side of it from the Browns. Organizationally this year, they've played pretty well without him, right? P.J. Walker has played well. So I don't think for the Browns, this is the end of the world. Look at the way this team is built to win. This team has a great defense, runs the hell out of the ball. They've got a couple of weapons, and I think in Amari Cooper, somebody like that can still help protect their quarterback. So I don't think when it comes to the result on the field, maybe it prevents them from being in the Super Bowl conversation. We can maybe go there, but I don't think that suddenly means, like most teams, you lose your starting quarterback and your season's going to be a disaster. The other side of it, though, is like every time something like this happens, we are going to say the same thing. You gave fully guaranteed money to somebody that missed a lot of time for obvious reasons, that didn't play particularly well for much of his time back and is now hurt. Like, this is why fully guaranteed, one of the many reasons why fully guaranteed contracts are just not going to become the norm for quarterbacks in the NFL.
So you're absolutely right. The long-term existential crisis for Cleveland has to be pretty dramatic, I'd say, right now. I got to imagine Brown's Sports Talk Radio this morning is full of takes, because you're right. Even after Deshaun came back last year, people were able to say, all right, well, he hasn't played in a season and a half, so there were always going to be things about his game that were going to take a while to adjust back if it was ever going to get back to that level. And over the course of this season, between multiple injuries and just flat out substandard play for a lot of the seasons, where Fitz, I would say one of the only redeeming qualities of Josh Allen's game this year had really been his ability to at times break tackles in the pocket and use his legs to affect the outcome of games. Besides that, there really hadn't been a lot consistently to hang their hat on a team that, as we knew going into the season, had a Super Bowl roster around him, but you are tied to him going forward. And so I guess for everybody involved, ensuring that you give yourself the best chance at a healthy version of Deshaun next year was probably the most important thing, but it's still hard to not feel pretty doom and gloom about the fact that you're now tied to a quarterback that just may not be that good and now is going to be walking into the next season even more prone to injury than he might have already been, because past injury is usually a pretty good predictor.
There is a point, and look, I know people are fed up with constantly having the same conversations about Deshaun, but I do want to rewind and go back to the moment he signed with the Browns. There was a question that at the time we were all at ESPN, right? There was a question I asked repeatedly: what level of winning would make this worth it? And by this, I mean the contract and everything that came with the person that you were signing off the field, the conversation that happened there, the embarrassment so many Browns fans felt in that moment that Deshaun was their quarterback. Like, what level of winning? And when I threw that out to the audience, the answer I got is, doesn't matter because we're going to win the Super Bowl, or it doesn't matter as long as we get to the AFC Championship game. It's like, we understand. Look, I'm not saying that's right or wrong. I'm just saying we understand society. Like, society's willing to say, I will forgive all of these things. Just bring me the trophies.
I was going to say, and sports society in particular, where for so many people, guilt or innocence is determined by what you do on the court or on the field after that, despite all of the allegations, despite the things about Deshaun Watson's conduct off the field that the NFL says in their investigation were true enough to suspend him for the 11 games there. All of that, you're right, embarrassment. In most sports fans' minds and the places they don't talk about at parties, they were going to go and look the other way on if it meant their team did better. And now that we've arrived at that point, I do wonder if that feeling of, hey, we sold our soul for this, now all of a sudden starts to feel a little bit more craven.
No, this feels icky. Like, there's no nice professional word for this, Mike. Like, I am where I am, and you know this. I think most people listening know this. Like, my fandom is the root of why I am in this business. And I know the feeling right now as a fan when you got to look in the mirror and be like, yeah, none of this was worth it. I have had to defend this signing over and over and over again. And you just get defeated, right? Like, I mean, there's just so many layers to this Deshaun thing that's more complicated than just the quarterback. And it's all of the emotion that goes into it.
I will say, though, I do think there was always going to be a section of Browns fans that understood, hey, I don't like morally the way it makes me feel to have a quarterback with this much, sexual impropriety and the sexual assault allegations tied to his name, the civil suits that hung over this for so long. There were going to, I think, always be a section of Browns fans that looked at this and said, I do not like the fact that my team is doing this, but I like my team. And so while some people stopped rooting for the Browns altogether, there was always going to be a group of fans that stayed and said, I've loved this team for so long, I might not like this, and I'm not going to go out of my way to celebrate Deshaun Watson, but I want my team to still succeed. Then there's going to be the other group of fans that didn't care, were defiant, were people that stood up and made X number of defenses for Deshaun Watson that I think were always showing their ass, that aren't going to feel any different today, other than the fact that now they think this guy is overpaid and might swing wildly. So we're always talking about different groups at once with that and trying to legislate in retrospect there. But I think now, Fitz, from the immediacy of this, from the football side of this, in this year, here and now, Kevin Seifert over at ESPN tweeted something that I think is very interesting in terms of what does this mean for the Browns season here and now? Because we have seen this year, the NFL's full of quarterback carnage. We spent so much time spinning our tires on the New York Jets and what they did and didn't do. And as Kevin Seifert points out, now is a good time to recall that Josh Dobbs spent training camp this year with the Browns and was traded to the Cardinals in a swap of picks at the end of August. I, as much as anybody, was drunk on DTR hype coming off the preseason. I was psyched that they gave him the opportunity, but now what we've seen from the limited action with DTR and the extended action of Josh Dobbs being thrown into adverse situations, this is another thing where I said yesterday, if the New York Jets had gone out and gotten Josh Dobbs at the trade deadline the way the Minnesota Vikings did, that's a playoff team. Conversely, I think we would look back and say, hey man, remember what Jacoby Brissett was doing last year and what Josh Dobbs is doing now? If you have either of those guys on the roster, you are probably a playoff team with this particular defense in this particular season.
I had forgotten Dobbs being there this summer. Like, that's just out of mind, right? Like that. You're absolutely right. I've spent the whole year using early March as the test for the Jets because I like to remind the entire world that Gardner Minshew signed with the Colts in March, right? So for, I think it was $3 million a year, like a low backup price for Gardner Minshew at the time. So I've used all year the Gardner Minshew test of, hey, if your backup's not better than Gardner, then your team didn't do a good enough job in March figuring out their quarterback position. We'll add Josh Dobbs to that. But the fact that he was in the building in Cleveland and now, you know, they are where they are is really an interesting phenomenon for the Browns. But again, I want to stress the Browns defense is so good. Their running game is so good. The Browns are still going to win a bunch of football games. Like, I don't think the Browns are about to be winless and suddenly picking in the top 12 of the draft. The Browns are still a playoff team to me with this defense, with these weapons, and with whoever the hell was playing quarterback. Because it's not like they were getting great quarterback play from Deshaun when they had him. They were winning despite him, not because of it.
No, and that's true. I would say the second half of the game this weekend against the Ravens that they won was probably the best ball they had gotten out of Deshaun Watson. Yeah. But you're right in that even with it just being Jalen Ford in the backfield and not Nick Chubb because of the injury, even with the injuries in the offensive line, you still saw them able to go and impact the game in that way. The defense, especially with Myles Garrett, who's having a defensive player of the year kind of season and has for a while now, you're right, is still going to have them firmly in the mix. But it just once again feels like the air kind of got let out of the balloon on a team that was supposed to be maybe more than that in a division in the AFC North that is looked like exactly what we predicted in the preseason after a couple of early rounds there. So worth pointing out that the Browns, because it's after the trade deadline, cannot make any sort of move to trade for a quarterback. They could sign a free agent off the street, so we'll see if there's anything that comes with that, or if it is the P.J. Walker show, Jason, who is a guy who's bounced around a bunch at this point in his NFL career and has played football for the Browns already.
Yeah, by the way, I think he's played well enough throughout the course of this year to get a tip of the cap, and also the fact that you just mentioned him and didn't mention him as XFL star speaks to the fact that he's like we saw PJ Walker play really well in the XFL, and it feels like in every other spring league, like he's a spring league guy that has now come in and cemented himself as a fall league guy, as a backup. I hope he goes out and absolutely tear, like in a beautiful world, he tears it up and is a delight and is not the reason the Browns missed the playoffs.
This feels a little bit like 2017 anecdotally, doesn't it, Fitz? You remember that year where we were so inundated with backup quarterbacks and starting roles, and we get to that postseason run that's got a Final Four where the Eagles eventually go on and win with a Nick Foles-led team after the injury to Carson Wentz, and there's all this discourse about how, well, do you really even need an all-time great quarterback at the position to go out there and do really well? It wasn't the case then. I don't think it's the case now, but I think the NFL is in a really interesting spot this year where defense has been the story almost wire to wire this season. We've spent a lot of time talking about all the different things between scheme. I saw the other day, the NFL Live crew did a great breakdown on the Ravens and how awesome their scheme is this year under Mike McDonald and how different the Browns defense was in the matchup this weekend. And you've got the Eagles defense that got a makeover this year. And the Chiefs defense is playing probably the best that we've seen in the Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes era. And so with that as the backdrop, Fitz, I will say, based on how well defenses are playing, the great personnel that have popped up over on that side of the ball, and all the injuries to quarterback, it does feel like a year where if you're not one of the teams with Patrick Mahomes on it, you might have a little bit better shot than most just because of how the ball has looked so far this season.
There's one other thing that happened that year, though, that as we got to the playoffs that we forget. That was the year that suddenly the playoff ratings just absolutely collapsed. And I remember at the time when we were talking on the morning show stuff, and it was like, hey, what is there a problem? Is the NFL dying? And there was all these big highbrow conversations about the ratings problems of the NFL. And I think it was your dad at the time that pointed out, well, maybe it's because nobody knows any of these quarterbacks. We ended up with a playoffs where nobody cared about most of the quarterbacks. It'll be interesting to see this year because you're right. I think weird quarterbacks are carrying teams farther. What's that going to mean? Like, I'm just telling everybody now to have a little bit of patience when we hear nobody watched this wild card game. If that wild card game turns out to be, let's just put it into the ethos, if it turns out to be PJ Walker versus Aiden O'Connell, right? Like, that's just not what most people are looking for their wild card matchups. Yes, everybody else knows.
Yeah, no, but you're right, Fitz, in that so much of the top end, and listen, it's all relative. The NFL is still going to be like 98 of the top 100 broadcasts for the year. It's relative to their own ungodly standard, but you're right. This year, last weekend, we already had the record broken when Tommy DeVito went out and started, I believe, for the Giants. He was the 10th different rookie quarterback to start for an NFL team this season, which was a record. And we're in an interesting point now, Fitz, where in the last couple of years, we were coasting on this high of, oh man, the league's in such good hands right now. You got all these great young quarterbacks that had popped off in the last few years, really coming off that 2021 draft class. Them as a poster of, well, nobody from that's really been all of that good. You've got, going division by division. Buffalo's dealing with some growing pains around Josh Allen right now and his second contract and what that team's going to be. The Jets, tire fire right now with the Aaron Rodgers injury. The Patriots, tire fire right now. The Steelers, Kenny Pickett outside of the fourth quarter has been underwhelming. The Browns, tire fire. The Jacksonville Jaguars, I feel like people are starting to ask questions about what the plateau is here with Trevor Lawrence recently. The Indianapolis Colts, injured, incomplete at this point. The Titans, rookie quarterback, incomplete at this point. The Raiders, Aiden O'Connell at this point. The Denver Broncos country, TBD at this point. You go in the NFC, that's the conference that didn't even come into this season with the war chest that we thought the AFC had at quarterback. And so we're at a very interesting spot right now, Fitz, because while we've got Mahomes, who has taken up that mantle for the next great guy, when we left the Manning and Brady era, we immediately gave way to Patrick Mahomes and what he's doing for the sport. Joe Burrow's right in that mix too. You've got Lamar Jackson up there at the top here, Jalen Hurts in Philadelphia. But outside of that, I think we're seeing and getting reminded of just how difficult it is to find the next guy right now and how quickly that hope of, we've got one of the new young hot prospects and how quickly that can turn to nothing.
That's why, Mike, if I hike up to the top of a mountain, I'm going to carry one flag and I'm going to plant this flag coming into draft season. And it's, if not this, then that. And this is very simple for me. If the answer for your favorite team is not Caleb Williams or Drake May, if it's not either of those names. Now, I will say, if you are picking first or second, I don't care if you offer me the next decade's draft. I am not going to move out of the first or second pick because I want Caleb Williams or Drake May. I don't care what you offer me. So all these teams that have a treasure chest that think they're going to move up, they have lost their damn minds. Nobody should trade out of one or two. If not this, then the answer is very simple. You better hope your team goes out and drafts every fat guy you have never heard of in your life that's an offensive lineman. And then you got to find a circle of trust of offensive linemen, fat guys, because realistically, these quarterbacks are getting hurt in part because, frankly, I don't think offensive line play is good enough in front of many of them. They take a bunch of wild hits. They're holding on to the ball too long while they're trying to figure everything out. Like, there aren't enough good left tackles in the NFL, which means quarterbacks are getting hit. Even in a soft quarterback league, we still see quarterbacks being exposed constantly because offensive line play isn't good enough. So if not this, one or two, if it's not Caleb Williams or Drake Drake May, then I want, like, as a Raiders fan, I hope every single round of the draft, they're coming up and they're saying, the Raiders have selected left guard you've never heard of. And I'm texting you and I'm saying, any good? And then they've selected right. Like, I want to go into training camp with 27 tackles. I don't give a damn anymore. Like, I think the way you fix the fact that you don't have a young quarterback is you build a team with an offensive line that's a juggernaut and can handle anything. And if we had more of those, we would have less quarterback injuries and we'd have more faith in some of the teams that are forced to use their backups.
I think it's a good reminder as we look at and try and parse through the C.J. Stroud Houston Texans experiment that's going on right now and working really well. And I say experiment because so many things changed for the Texans this offseason, and we didn't have one control variable, right? There's not one thing that we can point to and say, this is how we'll judge which of these factors was most important between rookie quarterback, between new head coach, between getting Jack Easterby out of there last year, between, all of the changes that you've made in the front office there, the other first round picks that you've made. It's going to be hard to pull out which one, but Jason, you bring up one of the ones that I think is most important is he is well protected at a base level. He's got a great play caller. He's got a great coach. He's got great guys around him. He's well protected is CJ Stroud, and that's made a world of difference for him there. And so you're right, as we look at the draft coming up, we always have this thing where we're going to look at, especially Caleb Williams, because of all the narrative energy around him, and say, well, he's supposed to be the guy that's going to be able to lift your franchise out of poverty. It's very rarely how it works. Like, Patrick Mahomes didn't even have to do that. The only recent example we have a guy truly seeming to will a team beyond where it should have been roster-wise is Joe Burrow, is because he did it getting sacked 70 times. Now, he still had T. Higgins and Jamar Chase, which is more than most people are walking into the party with, but he seemed to really, in a franchise that traditionally has been looked at as one with a ceiling and a team that did not protect him physically well, he's been the only recent example I can point to of quarterback has really bootstrapped the hell out of this thing and gotten people over the circumstances. Otherwise, it's if you're not going into a healthy organization, more quarterbacks are ruined than are able to save any given franchise every year. And that's going to be true of Caleb and Drake. One of them is going to get ruined by an incompetent franchise, and that's the sad reality.
Think of how many times we've seen smart football analysts on Twitter right now that are giving us all the same take on Bryce Young. Pass protection is such an issue. Like I said, pass pro is such a problem. I see it every single time. He's got to process faster, but pass protection is a problem. Well, when you've got a young quarterback that's getting absolutely beat up in the pocket, maybe it makes things a little tougher to process quickly because through this whole process, like it's just adding too many different variables to it, Mike. So I think you're 1,000% right. Like somebody's going to what would our analysis of Bryce Young look like today if he actually had a competent offensive line in front of him? We have no idea.
No, and we won't for some time here. That's going to be the charge for them in the offseason. The charge for the Browns the rest of this season, though, after the breaking news that, again, Browns quarterback Deshaun Watson will undergo season-ending surgery on a broken bone in his throwing shoulder, is how do they maximize what is a Super Bowl caliber defense with what they've gone? And I'll give you and leave you with this note from Spot Track. Michael Gennady, the co-founder and editor of Spot Track that does the contract stuff. The Browns have now paid Deshaun Watson $90.8 million for 11 games of work. Tough times around Cleveland. Coming up next, we'll get to the CFP rankings from last night.
back to GoJo and Golic. I'm Jesse Cofield. So we got the latest iteration of the college football playoff rankings. Georgia overtook Ohio State for the number one spot in the newest rankings that were released Tuesday night. So we saw Georgia do this after back-to-back wins over top 25 opponents. This was really the big movement that we saw here, fellas. But GoJo, earlier in the show when we were talking about this, you said you had something to say about this that didn't have to do with that change.
Yeah, I think there's going to be a part of this that grows more contention. And spoiler alert for everyone, Jason Fitz and I went over and did a Twitter Spaces reacting to this last night over for Yahoo Sports at his employer, where, again, you can check out Jason doing a lot of great videos, a lot of great content for the folks over there. Jason, you and I both looked at this with Georgia at number one last night and go, yeah, that kind of made sense. You predicted it right before we went on the Spaces that based on the backs of Georgia, whose schedule had been Drek, had been Michigan-like for the majority of the beginning half of the season, now finally hit the good parts. And they went out here and they started doing what Georgia does, beating people's asses again. They did it to Kentucky early in the season when they were ranked. I had a close win at home against Missouri, that Missouri team that now is up in the top 10 at number 9, which is important in all this, according to the committee, and then went and mud-stomped that Ole Miss team this weekend. You and I both looked at that, and I would assume this morning is the same for you. I got zero issue with that right now. Ohio State had very good wins early in the season, but the season changes. Those wins look different as time goes along. Notre Dame's lost a few more games since then. Penn State's added another loss to the column to Michigan, and so this kind of makes sense at this juncture.
Yeah, and I think that's sort of the human element of this. We've both gone through the mock committee process. We talk about that all the time, but just imagine if you had everybody in the room and you were trying to figure this out. Who's number one? Who's number two? I guess my answer to the committee right now, if I was on the committee, would be, why not Georgia? Because remember, it is the opponent based on where they stand today, not where they were when they played. So you're right, the resume favors Georgia. But I would also look at the room and I'd say, guys, like Ohio State, Michigan's going to play each other on Thanksgiving weekend. The winner of that game is likely going to be seen in a different light. So for now, why not reward Georgia for what they've done, how well they're playing, tip our cap and say, hey, you deserve to be number one, because I think it's a fairly compelling argument. But also, I'm comfortable with it because we don't really need to fight about it. Like, it all will get revisited on Thanksgiving weekend, and whoever wins Ohio State, Michigan at that point will have the best resume win of the season, which will justify putting that team at number one.
I understand the concerns of some people about what this says about the out-of-conference schedule. Because remember, Georgia had Oklahoma on the out-of-conference schedule this year and took it off once it was announced that Oklahoma was going to go to the SEC. It's why I applauded Texas and Alabama for keeping the game that those two had scheduled out of conference early in the season. That was one of the best. And for Ohio State, you did go to South Bend and you did knock off Notre Dame, who's a very good team. Like, you look statistically all over the place. They're one of the top teams in college football, but they've slipped up in critical places. They've lost big games. And really, right now, as you look at it, they've lost to the number 2 team in the country and the number 10 team in the country in Louisville, in addition to a Clemson team that's super talented but has underachieved this season. So that's still a good win for Ohio State and deserves credit. And I can understand the beef there, but Fitz, that out of conference thing is what comes up to, I think the real discrepancy is, and where you and I disagreed last night, is at the 4-5 spot now. So if the playoff was today, Florida State would be in and Washington would be out, despite the fact that Washington has a win over the number 6 team in the country in Oregon right behind them in this. Fitz, you thought Washington should have been in last night. Why?
Well, the metrics support it. So, like, if Ty goes to the batter, right, then I hate to be the guy that's commonly, the word analytics has become such a little trigger for people. But let's look at it. Like, the strength of record, which is one of the things that they factor in, and it's basically what the chance the average top 25 team would have your record or better. So strength of record right now, Washington is number 2. Florida State is number 3, right? So strength of schedule, Washington's is 43rd, not spectacular, fine, but Florida State's 55th, right? So game control, the metric which says, okay, how not only did you win, but did you look good doing it, basically? Did you have that game in control? Washington 5, Florida State number 10. So I'm sitting here looking at these 2 undefeated teams and saying, in every metric that the committee is literally told in writing they are supposed to consider, Washington is higher, and Washington also has the far better win over Oregon. Like, what does Florida State have on their resume that is better than a win over the number 6 team in the country? Sneak peek, the answer is nothing. So I'm going to reward the win here when both teams have had moments by the eye test where they haven't looked like a top 4 team. So since they both had failings, I give Washington the tiebreaker because all of the analytics the committee is told to consider factor into that.
Well, I think one of the things that Boo Corrigan, who's the chairperson of the committee, the athletic director at NC State, brought up was that Florida State is a more balanced team. When you look in terms of offensive and defensive efficiency, they grossly outpace Washington on the defensive side of the football. Both of them are great offenses. Washington's is one of the best offenses in the country. But what we've seen on the field, and this is the eye test matching the stats, is since the Oregon game, Washington's defense hasn't stopped anybody. I think I heard Alex Kirshner on Split Zone Duo, great college football podcast you guys should all check out, say the other day that they feel like a rich man's USC right now. And while I originally winced at that, it's not far off in that the offense has really had to carry the day with this defense not going out here and shutting most people down really since the Oregon game, doing anything of value. And so I think you can say, because the eye test is a part of this too, is, hey, you got two resumes that are really close. Florida State went out and scheduled LSU at the beginning of the season for their out of conference. Washington's out of conference was a Michigan State team that's on fire, that's sinking into the earth right now. And so you don't get a ton of credit for that. And Florida State, while they both have looked like they had their warts, and I would not be comfortable picking either to actually win a playoff game at this point, I would still say, hey, Florida State overall has looked like the more balanced team on the field, and they've got a resume that I can defend there too.
More balanced is a very good argument, but balanced got you a 2-point win against Boston College. And well, it's Boston College. That's always a tough game. It's a 2-point win against Boston College, right? Like, I don't care about that. A 7-point win.
It's not a tough game, by the way. Boston College, they should have beat handily and didn't. You're absolutely right.
Clemson, like you said, talented, underperforming. 7-point win that was an ugly game that came all the way down to the wire. Even last week.
That they should have lost on a field goal. If Clemson's kicker just makes the kick, the game's over.
100%. Even last week against Miami, where I said, you know what, this is going to be it. It's a rivalry matchup. It's an opportunity to come out and make that big rivalry statement against Miami. Right? So, like, I get the balance conversation, but I think even when you look at just those three games where Florida State hasn't necessarily looked like a dominant football team, I would credit Washington and their win over Utah far more than any of it. Utah is such a better football team than any of the teams I just mentioned, and we just watched them find a way to win that football game. So, like, I understand that, you know, the defense has been a problem. I'm not taking anything away from that, but my God, I trust their quarterback far more, honestly. And the lack of balance that they have has not prevented them from winning the games they need to win. Florida State is lucky at this point to be defeated. They're undefeated. They're not just good. They're lucky.
Yeah, health has also been up and down for Florida State. They've had injuries along their offensive line for a lot of the season. Johnny Wilson, one of their great wide receivers, has been out of the lineup a few times, banged up with some injuries. So there are things you can point to there. The bottom line is, Fitz, you talk about how the football is going to bail a lot of this out. This week is that case. Washington goes on the road to play number 11 ranked Oregon State, who, if you're looking for the gatekeeper for all the scenarios that you want, and there's scenarios out there about, hey, could we actually, after all of this, get two SEC teams, two Big Ten teams into this? We heard from ESPN Stats and Info that there are 7-10-0 teams right now. That's the most the sport has seen in this point in the season since the BCS began in 1998. We've got more people with access to the dance than ever, and I would argue Oregon State, in a year where they just got the court ruling where them and Washington State rule the Pac-12 right now. They are officially the Pac-2. They play Washington and Oregon in the next 2 weeks. They control the future of this, because if Washington goes out and beats this actually very good Oregon State team, the Pac-12 has been a better conference than the ACC this entirety of the year. Out-of-conference scheduling matters, but then at some point you're a victim of what happens in your league. And if Washington gets this win, they're going to jump Florida State in the next round of rankings. I feel very comfortable saying that.
I do too. What's going to be curious is when Washington wins out and Oregon wins out, and our Pac-12 championship game gives us the rematch of the one loss that Oregon has, and Oregon goes in and absolutely just rails Washington by 20. Now we're having a much different conversation too, because a one-loss Oregon team is going to be sitting there saying, got the best resume. It's about to get interesting.
And they would erase their one loss from the regular season, which we've seen in the past can matter, while Florida State would be saying, all right, if we keep this on track, we would be facing a now top 10 Louisville Cardinal team in the ACC championship game. Should that now count for something? And we've got no blemish on our record. It's setting up for a lot of really compelling conversations down the stretch here that we are all very excited to have. But coming up next, myself and my father got a chance to have a very compelling conversation with a guy that doesn't have to deal with any of this nonsense anymore. Coming up next, let's head back to Houston for the good vibes. Will Anderson Jr., star defensive end, number 3 overall pick for the Texans, stopped by to tell us all the differences between DeMeco Ryans and Nick Saban. Next.
Welcome back to GoJo and Golic. The Texans are seeing an immediate return on investment on their 2023 draft picks. 5 of their 7 picks from their most recent draft class are playing in more than 60% of teams' offensive or defensive snaps. Pretty good. One of those guys is defensive end Will Anderson Jr., and he got a chance to catch up with our dudes, GoJo and Senior, to talk about the youth movement that's going on with the team and how they're already finding success and making an immediate impact in the NFL.
All right, very excited to be joined by Will Anderson Jr. here. He is here on behalf of Old Spice and Big Brothers Big Sisters. They got a really cool program that Will is going to tell us about that you guys can get involved with here. But Will, I'm curious, as a rookie, you're in the league right now. You come in as one of the young guys on a team that's making a ton of noise in the Houston Texans. Do you have someone on the team that's like your big brother, a vet that's been your go-to early on in your career here?
Yeah, I would say Sheldon Rankins. That's been my guy. Like, he's been phenomenal, man. He's taken me under his wing, showing me the ropes. You know, he was once in my shoes, first-round draft pick, high choice, everything like that. So he knows what comes with it. So he's been keeping me grounded, making sure that my mental's good, making sure that I'm good as a person, everything like that. But also showing me ropes on the field and everything like that, how to watch film, how to watch tape, what to look for and things like that. And then just hanging out outside the field. He's been a really great guy that I really, grown close to and really look up to a lot.
Now, you have a coach in D'Amico Ryans who at this point is so high favored for Coach of the Year. Now, he was there at Bama before Nick Saban, but still at Bama. Do you guys swap any Bama stories at all?
No, not yet. But like we're very familiar with the Beachside Fly. That's like our little thing that we say at Alabama. So like he knows about it. And, it's a couple of Bama guys here that we know about, too. So it's been great.
What is the biggest adjustment? Because you mentioned some of the things that Sheldon helped you out with. You come from a program in Alabama that's been the standard in college football for a long time right now. But what for you was still the adjustment you had to make coming to this next level in the NFL, even from that?
I would really say just like detail, like really like detail. Because like in college, like, you get a ton of reps in college at practice. You get a ton of reps. But here in the league, you'll probably only get like 4 reps a rack. Like, and probably not even that, probably 3. I know as the year goes on, like, they want to keep you healthy and everything like that. So, like, those reps that you take, you have to be very precise and have great precision and very good, like, detail, like bright hands, feet, hands, everything like that, eyes, everything. So like I think that's just been one of the biggest things. Like every rep you take has to be a detailed, full out rep, like a game rep, because you don't get a lot of opportunities to do it.
What's making this team and particularly your side of the ball, this defense, play so well right now, where you're really surprising a lot of the analysts out there just how well you guys are doing?
Yeah, I think it's a couple of things. I think it's one, the swag that Coach D'Amico has brought with him on the defensive side of the ball. And I think it's just the players like buying in and just being hungry for it and like starving for the opportunity to go out there and dominate and like be relentless and have effort, have physicality and everything like that. Like we like just love to get another opportunity to go out there and play, not only for ourselves, but for our fans, Coach Ryans, everybody in the building, everything like that. So like I think that's what it is. Like everybody on the defense side of the ball is very hungry. We just want more and more and more. So it's just like, man, we keep doing this. We can really, we have the opportunity to be a really special defense, but it just comes with everybody buying in, being consistent, and then how we practice it. I think it goes back to that. Like, everybody's always locked in, bought into what we have to do, and execution.
You mentioned the swagger. Take us into a D'Amico Ryans week of practice, a meeting, because we see him post-game with you guys, and he's giving you guys the Victory Monday off. And when he addresses the team, it seems like he's still almost a player addressing the team. He does it in a way that seems like his comfort level when he was a leader in the locker rooms. What's he been like around the day-to-day for you, especially in comparison to a guy like Nick Saban, who he seems night and day different from?
Yeah, no, he's like Coach Ryans is the same guy. Like they come in the meeting room and he has that, that feel to him. Like he's still a player, so like it's easy for us to grasp like what he's saying or like what he's feeling and everything like that. He comes in with juice, comes in with high energy. Like we practice in the morning, so like of course everybody be trying to get up and everything. But he just comes in like, hey, let's go. Like we get the opportunity. Like and he's all about us. Like he doesn't really worry about no other team and nothing like that. Like, at the end of the day, it's all about the men in this room and what we're going to go out there and do on the field. And I think that's why I respect him and everybody else respect him so much, because he actually cares about us a lot. He loves his team. And, it just makes us want to just go out there and play for him even more.
And while Nick Saban's way worked, y'all have rings to prove it. I mean, there's nothing like showing rings to show that his system works. But is there a lot less yelling in Houston than there was in Alabama with Nick?
Yes, a lot less. A lot less, not as many, butt chewings and stuff like that, because it was quick. Like, you could be warming up and you could get yelled at in warm-ups and practice didn't even start yet.
Do you remember the first time Nick Saban cussed you out?
I ain't gonna lie, like, in college, like, he never really cussed me out. He probably said, like, two things to me, like as I was there. Like, I remember my freshman year, I think I had busted in coverage or something like that, and he was like, God damn it, 31, and he was just going, and he stopped. And I think after that, that was the last time I was like, okay, you're never doing that again. Like, that's never happened again. And since then, he's never, like, had to cuss me out or anything like that again.
Will, speaking of another guy who comes from a high-profile program, right there 1 and 2 with you in the draft. You and CJ are going to be linked together forever because you went one right after the other. Has anything about CJ surprised you this year? He's burst onto the scene in a way that so many people didn't expect. As you got to meet him and know him, were you shocked by anything about this?
No, I wasn't shocked at all. Like, I've been knowing CJ since, like, high school a little bit, like, towards the end of our high school careers, because we both did the All-American bowl together. And then it was so strange. Like, this offseason, we was together, like, a little bit, majority of the time, like, towards, like, coming up into the draft, like, we were together a lot. But then I got to see him play a couple of times. Of course, when they played Georgia National Championship, that was one of his best games to me in college. I thought he had a really great game. But, like, it's no shocker. Like, being in practice with him, seeing the type of guy he is, seeing how much he loves the game of football, seeing how composed he was in practice when things got hard, I already knew, like, this is going to be ease for him. Like, he has so much poise and calmness to him and knows that his preparation is everything to him and know that God's got him. I think that's why he's gotten so far, and I think that's why he will continue to get so far because of the traits that he has.
You told us the differences in practices with less reps but more focus on hands and feet. How about on the field? Tell us the difference of playing in the offensive against tackles in the NFL as compared to college and the differences there.
Yeah, it's just everything has, like, your moves and everything have to be quicker. That's, like, the biggest thing. So, like, the quarterback gets the ball out really fast. So, like, you don't have time to, like, dance around with the tackles or anything like that. And I can say, like, most of the tackles in the NFL are, like, way more, like, they're more vets. You know what I'm saying? So, like, they're a little bit more, like, savvy and finesseful now. Like, in college, like, you didn't see a lot of finesse tackles. Like, you see a lot of, like, oh, I want to, like, God. Like, here, like, you're going to see a lot of, like, hand play, like, may give you hands, may not. Very finesseful, like, stuff like that. So, like, it's just all about who you're going against and everything like that, and really knowing pass sets, how to defeat certain sets and everything like that, and how to play different sets. But, like, I can most definitely say that's been the biggest thing. Like, tackles are just more finesseful, more detailed in their craft, and more technical when it comes to pass sets.
Well, it's been incredible watching your adjustment to that already. I know only 2 sacks on the year, but that hardly tells the tale of everything you've been able to do, your defense, and how you guys pressure and get after the quarterback. So it's been incredible to watch, Will. Also incredible, I know you're here on behalf of Old Spice and Big Brothers Big Sisters. They got an Old Spice School of Swagger program that you're involved with. What can you tell us about this?
Yeah, it's they have more than 30,000 students on the Big Brother and Big Sister wait list for the mentorship, and it's been amazing. Like, Old Spice and Walmart is doing a great job with the mentorship, and I think that's what it all comes back to, just giving back to the community, helping kids out. I know for me, I had a mentor in my high school, Coach Fed and Coach Rogers, my high school head coach and defensive coordinator. They helped me out a lot. So just having this opportunity to help out, and I think that's why, like, I really love partnering with Old Spice, because they do a really good job of giving back to the community. And, man, like, it's been something special. And tonight is going to be a very special event to go talk to the kids.
Good. It's really nice that you get that platform now, right, in the NFL to really kind of expand upon some of these things you like to do.
Most definitely. Yes, sir.
It's very inspiring, Will, to see that that's something that matters to you. For other people that feel so inclined, you can learn more and sign up to be a mentor today at walmart.com/School of Swagger. Will, thanks for the time, man. Best of luck the rest of this season. We're excited to watch you guys keep doing your thing.
Thank you. I appreciate you guys for having me.
All right, welcome back to GoJo and Golic. Mike Golic Jr., Jesse Cofield hanging out here as we've had everyone else has left us. It's the final countdown here for the two of us. You know what, Jesse? Finally, we get a chance to just do this ourselves.
Two remain. It's what we've been waiting for, this moment all show.
The Thunderdome right here. Our thanks to everybody else who came before. We're going to get you to this, that, and the third. 3 quick stories to send you off into the rest of your day. As always, make sure you download, subscribe, rate, review. Leave us a 5-star rating. Check us out Monday through Friday live from 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern on the DraftKings YouTube channel, DraftKingsNetwork.com, Samsung TV Plus, Roku, a host of other delightful streaming platforms here. And if you missed any of the show, like our great guests, we talked about Charlotte Wilder from Oddball with Amin El Hassan joined us in the first hour. My father, Mike Golic Sr., is not a guest. He was here, but only in the first hour. And then Jason Fitz, Yahoo Sports college football and NFL analyst, as well as Fox Sports radio host, joined us here in the second hour to talk about Deshaun Watson, the news that he will be shut down for the season after having shoulder surgery, and the college football playoff rankings. You missed any of that, get it wherever you get your podcast, or right here on YouTube immediately after the show is done airing at 10 o'clock Eastern. Jesse, let's get to this, that, and the third, though, and start it off with one of the more, I am not a prude, as everyone knows, when it comes to weird food combinations. This one made my spine absolutely shiver.
Yeah, this felt like an assault to the eyes. We saw this on Jameson Williams, wide receiver for the Lions. His Instagram story, he's letting us in here on like a little hack, I guess, is what some might call this. So he likes to combine his cheeseburger at McDonald's with his Oreo McFlurry. So he put the Oreo McFlurry onto the bun, as you can see here. Not even onto the bun. He put it directly onto the meat. The meat part of the burger. He slaps that top on and takes a bite of it and is trying to tell us that this is good.
I have a lot. So when I first saw this picture, I didn't know it was the McFlurry. I was like, is that like a bunch of blue cheese? Is that a bunch of blue cheese dressing or maybe even like mayonnaise, like some mayonnaise-based condiment I thought that would be in the savory camp on here. And I get, like, I'm not even one of the people, Jesse, I don't know about you, I don't even like dipping French fries in milkshakes necessarily. No. That's just never been my thing. I know some people like that combination. This is depraved.
It's beyond the pale.
We need to suspend Jameson Williams for this, not the other stuff.
Yeah. He
needs to go back on suspension for this with pay. I don't want him to lose any salary there, but he's got to know that this is wrong.
I mean, first of all, I want to know how you find out that you enjoy the taste of that. Do you know what I mean? Because is it that you took a bite and then you took a sip and you were like, oh, this is pretty good? Like, is that how that started? Because the idea that you would just like slap some dairy product, just slap a little, the noise it makes, like onto your burger, it makes me sick.
I understand it's all going to the same place. Like that idea that, yeah, these two tastes and two bites might be in your mouth at the same time. You're making them both objectively worse.
Yes.
Like the heat of the burger is actively melting the ice cream. I'm not one of those people, Jesse, are you one of the people that likes the soupy stuff at the bottom of ice cream when it's melted? I've never understood that. No. I like my ice cream more solid. I like it to be ice cream. That's just me. Call me old-fashioned. So this feels like you're making both ingredients actively worse.
Yeah, very gross. To each their own. But like you said, we should probably suspend him for this.
Probably. So we're going to get to on the whole the league office for that. But you know what? I generally don't like to kink shame. But this is one where I have to kind of like clutch my pearls and go, there are children watching. And they might try this. And that's a dangerous thing.
Well, speaking of kink shaming, I don't know. Andre 3000 is releasing his first album in 17 years. And get this, it is a full flute album. So it's not a rap record, okay? So there's no bars, no beats, nothing. He doesn't sing either. He just plays flute. And I'm not just talking, you might be thinking one type of flute. We've seen Lizzo, go out and go ham on her flute. But we're talking contrabass flute, Mayan flutes, bamboo flutes. There's like other digital wind instruments apparently. So again, not to kink shame, but like, are you going to listen to this entirely flute-based album with no singing?
Probably. Like, you're curious, right? I know I'm curious.
I'm not that curious. It's going to be some flutes. I mean, good for them.
You know what? This is a testament to how much capital and how much trust Andre 3000 has built up in so many of us. Because again, first time in 17 years we're getting music from him. New Blue Sun is the album. November 17th is when it comes out. And he's been kind of an enigma to so many people. Like, after so much of the success of Outkast, he's really been a guy that's only shown up in features every now and then. He's popped up at parks in different locations, like spotting Andre 3000 on social media randomly with his flute out in places in the world has kind of been the only sport that we've had with this guy consistently. And so I just want to see what he's been working on. Like, if it mattered enough to him, because it sounds like he met up, he ran into a group of people that were in this world, and they started recording without the intention of putting out an album. And apparently this man, who's got a musical ear that's on par with anybody we've ever seen in hip hop, he heard enough of this, and the people he trusted heard enough of this, where they decided they wanted to share it. That piques my interest a little bit. I trust this guy. I do.
I just don't care how hard the flutes are going. There's no singing. There's no, I can't. It's not for me. I feel like I'm in the majority here. I'm not going to lie.
There's 8 songs on this album. The title of one of the songs, which should give you an insight into exactly how unhinged this is going to be, is, I swear, I really wanted to make a rap album, but this is literally the way the wind blew me this time. Yeah. That is the title of one of the 8 tracks.
And this is going to be, I almost feel like he's trolling us. Like, it's like a huge joke. He's releasing this album to see if we're just going to buy it.
It definitely feels like a social experiment. Yes. I will not begrudge you that, but I'm the mark. I am absolutely going to take part in this. And my favorite, the funniest possible outcome for this is, what if it slaps? Like, what if it's phenomenal, and now you've got a whole nation full of people that are just craving flute albums?
I mean, you know what? If maybe this is what heals America. This flute album's going to come out. We're all going to come together over the flutes, the beautiful sound. We're going to rediscover, our roots of classical instruments being played. I don't know. Maybe you're right, but I think more likely than not, it's not going to be that great, and it's going to be like, okay, cool. You're so unique. You're an artist, man. Yeah, like flutes.
I was going to say, this is really going to be a test of our ability to consume the flute. We had Lizzo in the James Madison Crystal Flute saga. Like you said, she's been carrying the banner for flautists in the public light. And now we're going to see if Andre 3000 can bring that thing home. Jesse, let's get to the third here with another interesting trend from a pro athlete.
Yeah, absolutely horrifying. We found out that Patrick Mahomes has worn the same pair of underwear on Sundays every game of his NFL career. Okay, so there were rumors about this, and then he confirmed them. He confirmed them with Eli and Peyton Manning, and was like, yeah, he was like, my wife Brittany got them for me. I threw them on that first season. We had a pretty good season that season. So then it became a superstition thing. So it's just on Sundays that he wears this pair of underwear. But that underwear, I mean, Jesus Christ, it has seen some miles. Like, I'm just saying, aside from the fact that this guy has made an obscene amount of money and can obviously afford all the underwear in the world, I get that it's a superstition thing, but the swamp ass that underwear has been bathing in, and the juices, and I know he's washing it, but it's only one day a week, but is it getting put into a hermetically sealed container? What's going on with it?
He did say, I mean, if we're on a hot streak, I can't wash them, So that would be my biggest question. It sounds like the underwear he's just wearing to the game, but I get this. I mean, I've got underwear in my closet over here that I've had since at least 2013.
Yeah, but you're not playing an NFL game in those.
No, but me living life every day is about the equivalent of the level of swamp ass for most NFL players, so I can't say it's too far off. I also used to wear an undershirt when I played football that was stained orange with my own vomit and spit by the end of the season each and every day. It got washed, but it couldn't wash that out of it. So sports will make you do some pretty nasty stuff, and to each their own on that, unless you're Jameson Williams in the McFlurry burger. If you didn't lose your lunch listening to this podcast, download, subscribe, rate, review it. Leave us a 5-star rating. Tell a friend about it. Thanks so much. Have a great day. We'll talk to you guys tomorrow.